Let me just say good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm really
Good morning.
excited to kick off this meeting this morning, and I hope all of you are eager to learn more about Year 360. At Watkins, we realize how important your role is as a senior leader and how important it is in bringing out the best in individuals, teams, and in the organization. And so the Leadership Challenge is designed to grow those skills and capabilities of our leaders by enabling you to build and lead those high-performing teams. So it's important that you know how important your leadership is in having engaged and committed employees. So now I want to turn over the meeting to Brett and Dan from Integris, who have partnered with us to help us understand our results and share their leadership expertise.
Well, thank you, Kim. Hey, everybody. This is Brett Cooper. I'm the one who's been peppering you with emails about your LPI and getting you set up for this meeting today. I'm president and co-founder here at Integris. I actually had the opportunity to work with the Watkins executive team at the end of last year, kind of do the introduction to what this leadership challenge is all about. And man, that seems like it was a lifetime ago. Such a different situation in the world, and of course a different situation at Watkins. You know, we had the dates scheduled to do a full leadership challenge, a Watkins leadership challenge workshop with the full LPI and everything, and then of course COVID hit and offices were shut down, people were furloughed, and we kind of put everything on hold. The main reason why we put today's session together was as we were planning and in fact getting started with the spring version of the Leadership Challenge workshop for you all, we had already launched the LPI 360 assessment. And as Kim was saying, there's some fantastic experience and feedback that can come out of this 360 process. Once we recognized that we had to put the brakes on the workshop and that we weren't going to be getting back together until the fall to do the full experience with the Leadership Challenge, I took a look at the LPI system and recognized, hey, there were already a lot of people that already provided you with feedback. And since feedback is a timely thing, feedback is a gift and it's a timely gift, we wanted to make sure that you all had the opportunity to see what kinds of comments people were making about your leadership. Because after all, now is certainly a time for leadership. My guess is that everybody on this call probably wakes up with a little bit of uncertainty and kind of thinking, where the heck are we going next? Well, if we feel that way as leaders, think about how everyone on our team feels. So my guess is that the feedback that you're going to get or that you've already gotten from your LPI can be put to use right away in the interim until we get to the fall when we really dig in even deeper into that. One other thing I will say is that we will reopen the LPI 360s as we get into the fall. So if you haven't gotten feedback from all your direct reports or you haven't gotten feedback from your manager yet, not a problem. You will get that when we move into the fall. So we'll reopen that process and there'll be more around that. So I wanted to, with that, just set the stage for today. I want to tell you what our objectives are, and then I want to introduce you to the star of the show, who is Dan Schwab, a dear friend of mine and an absolute leadership expert. So here are our objectives for the day. We have just 3 of them. The first is we want to introduce you to the Leadership Challenge. Now, this is a 30-plus year research project on what leadership is all about. And it's the foundation for both the Leadership Challenge workshop that we will be doing later in the year and also the LPI. The second objective we have for today is to really explore that leadership assessment, that leadership practices inventory, or LPI as we call it. And again, that's really going to be the focus. We'll get a lot more into the research and a lot more into leadership activities later in the year. And then the third point that we want to make sure we do for you is orient you to what that one-on-one coaching session is all about. in the email that I sent to you all this morning with about a 1 hour to go, I did include a link to the schedule of how you schedule your one-on-one coaching session with Dan. But we're going to tell you more about, okay, well, what is that coaching session? What do you cover in that? So by the end of this hour, you'll be in a good position to be able to say, yep, I want to take advantage of that. And then you can jump on there and schedule your call. So with that, Dan Schwab. I've known Dan for, what have I known you for, Dan? 8 years now? 8 years. We met in 2012 when I was first learning about the Leadership Challenge. We had just started Integris Performance Advisors in 2011, and we were looking for the leadership model that we wanted to use. And I was investigating the Leadership Challenge, and I met Dan Schwab at a conference with the authors of the Leadership Challenge, and just really hit it off. I live in the Bay Area, and Dan also lives in the Bay Area. Matter of fact, he's a California native like myself, lives up in Richmond, which if Dan were to tell you, Richmond is just to the left of Berkeley. So if you know your map, it's to the west of Berkeley. I think you do that joke better than I do, Dan. Probably need some setup.
That's fine, Brett.
Yeah, that's all right.
Carry on.
Dan has been doing this kind of work for quite a while. 30 years as an educator, a facilitator, and a leadership coach. He's one of the original certified masters in this content of the Leadership Challenge. He's worked with Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, the authors and the researchers of this material since 1987, and he has worked with more of our clients, more of our Integris clients than any other leadership coach. So you're really in for a treat for him. One of the things that really has connected me and Dan with each other is his focus on world travel, his naturalist nature, and his really caring for the world. I'm gonna show you an image here that is Dan and his lovely wife, Diane there. This is an image that was taken in Nepal. Dan's wife actually started a nonprofit a few years back called Partners in Sustainable Learning, which is all about taking early childhood education to developing countries. And we've been doing work in Nepal. I have the opportunity to be on the board of that nonprofit. So Dan is not only a professional leadership coach, but he is a man who cares about the world. So with that, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to run the show
Brett.
here. So over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Brett. You know, the one thing I'd say about myself, if you want to know who I am, I just have curiosity. I am interested in you. I'm interested in your world and how we together can make that a better experience, not just for you, of course, but for the people who look to you as a leader. And that's everyone on this call. It's everyone in our world today. We know how crazy the times have been lately. I don't think any of us are fully cognizant of how much COVID has changed our world. Of course, we're all dealing with it, but it's deep, it's profound, it's happening way too fast. And it just fits into the nature of the 21st century when we have things changing so rapidly. Technology, markets, regulation, personnel, oh boy, it goes on. And the shifts between generations. Many of us who maybe have a few more miles on us working with people who are millennials and the digital natives, recognizing that we need to have a different understanding of how work happens for them so that we can be ahead of them, because leading is about going first, right? Many things we could talk about around your organization also needing to be ahead of the game, if you can, and how multifaceted that is. It's just a few words on a slide, but we all know what that means. Moment to moment, we have to be thinking, how can Watkins position itself to continue to be the leader in what you do for the good of everyone is in your community. What our research has shown us is that great organizations don't happen by accident, and there is a need for great leadership within any organization of any size, that the opportunity for us to be more effective leading others is in front of us every day. And the good news is we've got better tools all the time to do that. Just the fact that we can do a meeting like this via Zoom, think how much different it would be if we were just on the phone, couldn't see each other, didn't have access to the slides, et cetera. You know, can do a lot more than we think, even with the constraints we're under. And sometimes when I think about organizations we work with, I like to put up this graphic, because this describes in a visual way what a lot of our organizations look like. We sort of pieced it together bit by bit, layers on top of layers. And if we were to reinvent our organization, there'd be fewer kinks in the pipes, I guess you could say. But the water's coming out anyway, so we can't really say it's not working. We just have to think, how can we do it better? And since you are a spa and hot tub company, I can say I can appreciate the need for warm water. I was in my hot tub earlier this morning, though I'm sorry to say it's not a Watkins brand hot tub, but I get it. So I appreciate what you do. And really what it comes down to is every one of us has an opportunity to do what we do better, to advance the cause of our organization, our part of the organization, our place in the community. Every day we wake up and we have the question, what can I do today that's going to move things forward? And that's what it means to lead. And when we talk about leadership, sometimes I like to put up this slide that makes it clear that for any of us in our careers, we started out as individual contributors in something. You're an engineer, or you're an IT person, or you're an HR person. Your expertise is as an attorney or an accountant or what have you. That we all start out that way, but then as we go through our careers, we get promoted into supervision, meaning we have to be responsible for other people. Simple, right? Or we take on management responsibilities, that is running the show day to day and all those hard skills around management. And then there's this thing called leadership, which is a distinct field of study. It overlaps with the other ones, but it's a different animal. And what I've learned in my career, or what I've come to realize, is how deficient our educational system is helping us understand the skills in these three areas and recognize that even late in our careers, we have the opportunity to learn how to do these things better. It doesn't happen by accident. But when we talk about leadership, well, if you look at that word and just step back at it from it and thought, well, what part of speech is the word leadership? What we're going to say is it's a noun. It's a thing, a noun, a person, place, or thing. But leading people, to lead, a verb, is much more descriptive of what we're actually pointing you towards with the leadership challenge. Leadership is not a thing. It's not a commodity that you could buy. And well, clearly, leaders are people. It's not about your position. We could say, well, I have a leadership position in my firm because I've worked long and hard to get there. The truth of the matter is, it's not, your effectiveness as a leader isn't based on your position, it's based on your behavior. It's what you do. People follow you because you're worthy of being followed, not just because you say so. So of course, as managers, we can tell people what to do, and there's certainly a need for that. But what you will get with that at best is compliance. And what we want to do is recognize that leaders go first, initiate things, mentor, and guide others towards a better future. That's what leaders do. And in this program, we've taken that approach by asking this question. This is actually the original research question that Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner used in the 1980s to investigate this interesting field called leadership. And that is, what practices do leaders engage in? What is it that leaders do? That is the question. What do we do that people are worthy, that is worthy, makes people want to follow us because they want to, not because we tell them to. And this research began with these two gentlemen, Jim Kouzes, Barry Posner, both natives of the Bay Area. Both live up here, did their research at Santa Clara University starting in the 1980s, asking that very question. What is it that leaders do? It's a question of curiosity. And what I think they're amazed themselves at how far this has taken them. The book that all of our work is based on, called The Leadership Challenge, is now in its 6th edition, has had more than 2 million copies printed in 12 languages, and has become a worldwide guide for people who want to make more of a difference in the world, whatever that is. And in addition to the book, the Wiley Publishing, who owns the rights now, has created a franchise called the Leadership Challenge, which is a very dynamic set of tools and materials that allow people like Brett and me to bring this to organizations worldwide. And just in terms of credibility about the Leadership Challenge, it's important to note that this is a research and evidence-based program. They didn't make it up. Data collection has been going on for more than 30 years and is based on work that's been done in 81 countries now, not just in the US, North America, or Europe, as you might expect, but Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, Latin America, you name it. And when you read the book, you will find that there are case studies from people all over the world. And indeed, those case studies provided the foundation for the research, because when we ask people, what did you do? What were you doing when you were at your best as a leader? Those personal best stories that we asked you to look at in the pre-work, if you had a chance to look at the e-learning module, that those case study stories provided the raw data for what is it that leaders do and that they're best according to them, according to you, according to us. We've taken that and massaged that into a model and an evidence-based program that elevates those behaviors in a way that we can all learn from and emulate. The LPI, which we'll be talking about a little later, Leadership Practices Inventory, there's been more than 3 million people participate in that. So we have a very deep base of knowledge to provide you coaching on your own leadership from. And then being that Jim and Barry are academics, they've also engaged other researchers. More than 600 PhD dissertations have been written about the LPI. They're all available on the leadershipchallenge.com website. I think I'm talking too fast. So we have a lot of reasons to believe in the power of this material. And the whole point, of course, is what does it mean for you and how it can help you elevate what you're doing at Watkins and elsewhere. That's the point. It's back to you. So all of that research, when it was massaged down, when we took all of that data and boiled it down, it turns out there are basically 5 areas that leaders engage in. We call these the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. And just a brief overview of that, the first practice is that leaders model the way. That is, set a personal example for others. We all know that we have to walk the talk, right? Well, turns out that's what people worldwide would identify as a key characteristic of leaders. The second practice is that leaders inspire a shared vision. That is, talk about the future in such a way that motivate people to want to be part of it, that provide them something that they want to be part of. Leaders also challenge the process, which means in order to put our vision into action, we have to question the way things have been done now. We have to question the status quo. We have to continually be innovating and looking for new ways to do things. This is no surprise. I'm sure your business is built on innovation in many ways. And leading is all about people. So the last two practices are about people. It's the human element. We enable others to act, which means we help other people succeed. Leaders are interested not just in themselves, but in how they can create a team, how they can help other people advance their careers, because when we do that, people provide their best work to us. It's about a community. And to encourage the heart, the 5th practice, a surprise to many people that it's equal to the other 4, is how we create an atmosphere of recognition and significance or meaning to people. That to encourage the heart is at the center of leadership, really, because it's about how we touch others. So those 5 practices put together really tell us what to do. Do you want to lead? Do you want to go first? Do you want to make Watkins a more successful company? Do you want to make your school for your kids a more successful community for your kids? These 5 practices tell us what to do in order to have those outcomes come to pass. So briefly, I'm going to describe the 5 practices just a little bit more, and then get into the LPI, which will allow us to see how you can actually measure your leadership behavior as viewed by yourself and by others. So first practice, model the way. We understand that our presence with other people makes a big difference, and that to be credible, we have to be honest and competent and forward-looking. And our example speaks volumes about us. And in fact, this is the one power no one can ever take from us, is how we speak in our own voice, understand what's important to us, what our values are, and how we live those out in the workplace. People are evaluating us on our behavior constantly. It's what we do. It's what people do. We're always checking each other out. So how we choose to behave makes a difference. Everyone knows this. That we can set the example for other people by aligning what we do with the values of the group. So Watkins is a strong company with a strong culture. As leaders, we exemplify the values of the company and express them in our own way. And when we get to the workshop, hopefully we will do in the fall, we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about, well, what's most important to you in your life at this point? How do you demonstrate that to people? How do you model behavior for people? And we'll see how this plays out on the LPI in just a few minutes. I'm trying to keep track of the time here. Anyway, the second practice is how we inspire a shared vision. Now, many of us could have a vision for ourselves, and of course that's important. You know, where are you going? What do you want to do in your life? Where do you want to be in 5 years? That kind of thing. But this is about inspiring others to a shared vision of the future that's going to be workable for them as well as for you. So what future can we project for Watkins and your part within it? What exciting and ennobling possibilities can you provide to people so they say, wow, I see where you want to go. I want to go there with you, to enlist others in that common vision by appealing to what's going to work for them as well. And as we'll see when we talk about the LPI in just a moment, the lowest scoring area worldwide for leaders, our 3 million people in our database, is this practice. How do leaders help other people see a future that's worthy of our past and the path to build it? This is getting even harder day by day. I mean, who can predict even how our schools are going to be functioning this fall? It's really hard to be visionary now. It's just, again, points out how important it is that we focus on this. And when we talk about challenge the process, this is very familiar for anyone who's been in a management or leadership role. We know that continuous improvement is the path to the future, that if your product isn't continually outpacing the marketplace, you will be eclipsed by somebody else. That as leaders, we need to continually be looking for opportunities to innovate, change the way we do things, to grow, to improve. There's no end to this, of course, and I'm sure you're all very adept at it. And to recognize that to put the change process to work, we have to continually be experimenting, trying things. Well, what if? And what if we did this? And we used to do it like that, but how can we do it better? Is helping people recognize that the risk that is inherent in creating new things is a necessary and good thing, within reason. And that we have to help people feel safe around the idea of trying things, even if many of our experiments don't work. In fact, we could probably say that if we're not making enough mistakes, we're not trying hard enough. We got to continually be looking for the next thing. So leaders challenge the process. And we do all of these things, inspire a shared vision and challenge the process through the agency of other people as well. Of course. It's about your team. It's about the people who look to you for guidance, who look to you as a leader. How are you fostering a sense of collaboration? How are you building trust and strengthening the relationships with people around you? This is what leaders do. They create the team and they have people feel confident, not just in you, but in themselves. That we strengthen others by continually helping them build their skills, their knowledge, their sense of what's possible for them. We're mentors, and I would bet if we had the opportunity to ask that many of us have had mentors in our careers. And if you look back at who that person was and what they did for you, they probably believed in you and supported you in ways you didn't even know, maybe gave you some tough love when you needed it. You now are the mentors for the people around you. We are. That's the natural role of the leader, helping people grow. And finally, to encourage the heart. As I said, the heart is the center of our lives. It's how we connect with other people. It's how we recognize contributions that people make as individuals, because every one of your staff do extraordinary things. And our job as leaders is to notice and call it out in an appropriate way. And also to recognize that there's a notion of team excellence and celebration that we can all engage in, to demonstrate that we understand that the hard work that people put in every day probably put in more time with your company than they do with their families, that we show appreciation for that in ways that are delightful to them, that recognize that there's this connection that we all share. So when we put all of this together, what we see is this model of leadership, this actually a reflection of what people worldwide say they want from their leaders. We set the example, we talk effectively about the future in an excited way, we help people recognize the everyday opportunity to improve things, we strengthen the ability of others to succeed, and we do that in a way that's fun and that connects people to one another. That's what it means to lead. Now, I'm thinking that a lot of this is pretty familiar, that it's not like we're telling you anything you haven't heard before. Yet, on the other hand, what we've done is created a concept map, if you will, that makes it easy to keep this top of mind. Model, inspire, challenge, enable, encourage, or MICE, M-I-C-E-E for short, becomes the sort of organizing principle, the operating system, if you will, for us as leaders, not just for what you're doing today, but how you're building these skills in other people as well. So I'm going to take a moment and see if anyone has a question. Of course, you could type it into chat, or Brett, if most of us are on mute right now, but if you have a question, feel free to voice it before we go on. We're good on time, so.
Hi, it's Karen. I have a question.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. So do each of these 5 practices, do they carry the same weight to becoming the exemplary leader, or are there different weights applied?
Well, that's a great question, Karen. Our understanding is they're all equally important. And it's situational as well. You can't just go around being visionary every moment. You have to also hold people to the hard task of improving things day by day. But they fit together into a language. So you could say, if you were learning Spanish, that, well, learning verbs is important, learning nouns is important, but it's how you put it all together that really makes you fluent. And as we get to the LPI in just a moment, I think that will become more apparent.
Hey, Dan, I think your story about how the Encourage came about, the story with Barry, kind of applies here for Karen and everybody to see how one of these cannot be omitted. Can you share that?
I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, Brett, so maybe you could just speak to it. That's fine. Well,
the fact that Barry Posner, one of the authors, as they were doing this research, it was the story as his father was ill. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
All right, you want to pick it up?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Barry's quite an interesting guy. He lives here in Berkeley, and great researcher, but also a really warm human being. And he tells a story about how he was sitting in a restaurant with his father. And I suppose his wife was there, and maybe his mom as well. And his father had a heart attack and collapsed. And they called the paramedics, and they put him on the gurney, and they took him to the hospital, to the ER. And his dad passed away. He didn't survive. And Barry and his wife went to the hospital, obviously in deep grief. And the doctor came out and said, well, you know, Barry, your dad was in really great physical shape. All of his systems were in good shape, except his heart. And without the heart, the other systems don't matter. And he uses that as a metaphor about organizations, which I think is really powerful. You know, we can do everything right. We can have the most successful business model and great management and great products and all of that. But without the heart, without the connection between people, we're really missing something. That's what makes a great organization, the one that people fight to get into and don't want to leave. And I think that Watkins is pretty strong in these ways already, from what Brett's told me. A little I've talked with others in your company. So just think about how we can strengthen these things going forward. If you have other questions, feel free to type them into chat and Brett will bring them up. But I want to keep going here so that we get through what we want to talk about. Because the important thing here is to focus on the LPI, the leadership practices inventory, because that's how we measure leadership believe it or not, leadership is measurable. A lot of people are surprised by this until you think about it, are introduced to a tool like this, that we've actually been able to quantify leadership along a dimension of 30 behaviors. And we do that with this tool called the LPI, which was first introduced in 1987 and has been used worldwide now with millions of people. So what this is a 360. You all know what that is. It allows you to rate yourself on these 30 behaviors of leadership and then get input from others as well, providing you a composite way to look at how you lead now. That's the reality check. And then the coaching part is, how do you take this forward to be even more accomplished than you are already? So there's 30 statements. There's 6 for each of the 5 practices. So it's a very simple construct. And we developed this because we understand that people need both a qualitative and a quantitative way to understand themselves. So both narrative and numbers, if you will. And we use both. But what's interesting about the LPI on the 30 behaviors of leadership is it measures frequency of observed behavior and nothing else. So it's not an IQ test. It's not a personality assessment. It's nothing like that. All the LPI measures is how frequently you think you do things, in most cases with most people. And then you've asked a group of observers to say how frequently they see you doing these things, because the more visible you are, the more effective you are. It's a very simple construct, but a very powerful one. And as you know, you can have as many raters or observers as you choose, up to 99 actually, though I've never seen that many. And you can put those observers into 4 observer groups, or 4 parts of your life, if you will. So one would be your boss, sure. And you can have multiples if you have more, if you're in a net, matrixed organization. Your direct reports, as many as you might have, co-workers, that would be people you're on a peer level with. And then there's a group of others, which oftentimes it's people in your community, maybe it's your church group, or it's a professional organization. You want another perspective on how people see you behaving. You can have as many as you want in all of those categories, and the ability for all of those points of view to come to you is why we call it a 360. As I said, it's only about a measure of frequency on the numeric side, that's it. And it's on a scale of 1 to 10, from almost never to almost always. These are clearly very ambiguous terms. The difference between fairly often and usually is a matter of interpretation. The numeric results give you a sense of how people observe you. And you noticed when you did the self-assessment that you have to give a rating, a numeric rating for each item. There is no NA, does not apply, because the author's contention is that all of these behaviors matter. Back to you, Karen. They're all important. So if an observer going through the survey says, well, I don't really see Stephen doing that, the instruction is to give it a low frequency, meaning I don't see it very often, because that tells you you might want to pay attention to that. Maybe it's important, maybe now or in the future. So this gives you a lot to think about. That's what the LPI does, gives you a lot to think about. So as I said, there's these 30 behaviors that there's 6 for each of the 5 practices that you're actually rated on. You're familiar with these now. So for Model the Way, one of the questions your observers responded to was, how often does, I got to pick somebody here, how often does Brick, is that a panda, Brick? That's your shirt. Okay. How often do they see you set a personal example of what you expect of others? Because we know the dissonance that comes about when people say, hear you say, do this, but then you do the opposite yourself. We know that's just not the way to go, right? So that's from Model the Way. Or how often do people experience you describing a compelling image of what our future could be like? That's from Inspire a Shared Vision. People need this. They're hungry for it, especially now with the turbulence in our world. Wow. Or from Challenge the Process, how frequently do people see you experiment and take risks, even when things might not work out? Because if we want people to take appropriate risks, they have to see us doing it as well, right? Or how about treating others with dignity and respect? Is that their experience of you? How often do I see Deanna treating others with dignity and respect? You're going to get some feedback on that. It's powerful stuff. And just to let you know, this item which is now item 14 on the survey, is the highest scoring item in our database. Meaning of all the things we expect of our leaders, this is the one we see most frequently, that we're treated well. And that's a great statement about humanity, the leaders in the world. And then from Encourage the Heart, how often do you give members of the team lots of appreciation and support for their contributions? You're going to get some direct feedback about this, which will help you calibrate what you want to do with what's actually observed by others. Very powerful stuff. Okay, so I'm going to briefly, now I know you've all gotten your reports, so I'm just going to go through this briefly. Here's just quickly what you see on your report and a couple of tips on making sense of it before we have our coaching session. So the first page of the report, we call this the 5 Practices Data Summary, and it shows the 30,000-foot view of your data. So for Model the Way, we know that represents the cumulative results from 6 specific questions that are scored 1 to 10. So 6 times 1 to 10 equals 6 to 60. So this self-score here, this your own score, you had a possible score of 60. This person gave themselves a 53. That's an average of 9. That's a pretty high score. They think they do these things at a very high level of frequency. And when you look at the average score from all the observers, all 9 observers displayed to the right, you can see that their overall score is considerably less, 46. There's a discrepancy there. We got to look at that. Now, the observers, 1 manager, 4 direct reports, 3 colleagues, and 1 other. That's what this person's report, how it came back. You'll notice if you look across the line of scores that there's 1 outlier score. There's 1 score that's significantly lower than the others, and that's from D4. And if you look down the column of D4, you can see that this person's scores overall were lower on every dimension. Now, before you start figuring out who D4 is so you can go fire them, you might want to just recognize that no, you don't want to throw out the outlier score. You want to hear, well, what's the message coming through on this? You know, they've scored you significantly lower. Well, are there circumstances like you don't see them very much, or maybe they're in a remote location, or they're new to the organization, or maybe they're just a tough grader? A lot of questions start to come up in your mind about the data that when you and I are on the phone together, we will explore those things to help you make sense of your feedback. Numbers on a page by themselves don't tell you a lot. So when you look down the other 4 practices, same story, your self-score, the average score of others on Inspire or Shared Vision, the average scores are identical, more or less. So it shows a high degree of correlation between what you see yourself doing, what others people see. That's a good thing, etc. So this is the first level of looking at the report. Now, if you skip to the back of the numeric part of the report, you will see a graph that looks something like this. This is the same data we were just looking at, but in a visual format. So you can see a column for each of the 5 practices, and then you will see there are symbols on the chart that equate to your different observer groups. So the manager is the green pyramid, what is that thing? Diamond. And then lines that connect each observer group. So you get a sense of how your observers overall are rating you on these 5 practices. Gives you a visual. So for instance, in the middle of this slide under challenge to process, you can see there's a cluster of very consistent answers or ratings from everyone except the other group, which is the little triangle at the top. And we're looking for consistency. You're looking for consistency. That's a place of saying, well, everybody sees me about the same. That's good. How could I move that up? And if you look at Encourage the Heart, you can see there's more spread between the observer groups. So that might lead you to ask the question, well, am I behaving differently with one group than the other? How come my direct reports see it this way and my boss sees it that way? Good questions to ask. The answers are not on the chart. The answers are between your ears. So that's what we will tease out. Now, this data is plotted against a background. You'll see on the left-hand side where it says least frequent to most frequent, a scale of 0 to 100. What this is doing is plotting your scores against a database of about 1 million people. So it gives you a sense. How do you, I guess, measure up, if you will, against a very large sample of others who have taken this assessment? And you'll see the scores for this person are right in the middle, meaning they're kind of in the middle of the pack. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a relative sense that you can gain of your relative ranking. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it because it's not about comparing yourself to others. It's really about thinking for yourself, well, where do I want to be with this? How do I want people to see me as a leader? How do I lead more effectively by engaging in these 30 behaviors more frequently? That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about. And then just a couple more pages out of the LPI report. For each of the 5 practices, there is a page like this. This is for Model the Way, and it shows the breakdown of results on each of the individual behaviors. So you'll remember there are 6 for Model the Way. Here they are. The numbers next to each item just indicate its position on the survey. There's no other significance. So this allows you to see much more specifically how are people responding to you in these very specific ways. So some of these behaviors, again, are very common sense, as in number 11, here right in the middle of the page. Follows through on promises and commitments that he or she makes. I mean, this is not a surprising thing to measure. How frequently do people see you following through on things? Hopefully that's a high score. This is well understood in the professional world that we do what we say we'll do, of course. But if there's variation amongst your different observer groups on a question like this, you have to ask yourself, well, am I being inconsistent? What else could I be doing? How could I take this and turn it into value for my people? Some of the other elements on the survey are a little less apparent, might take a little more thought. Item 26 at the bottom of the page is one of these. We're asking, I got to pick on somebody else here. Robin, for instance, you're asking your observers, Robin, how clear they think you are about your philosophy of leadership. Wow, that sounds deep, doesn't it? What's a philosophy of leadership? Good question. It's really about your basic understanding of your role as a leader and how you demonstrate that day to day. A philosophy of leadership might be simple 3 bullet points. You know, I believe the best in people. I think my job is to bring out the best in other people and set a strategic direction. I will ask you to articulate your philosophy because a lot of things are implicit in our behavior that when we call them out and develop them, they become a lot more accessible to us and a lot more powerful for others. That's a good result from something like the LPI is to dig in. So this is an example of this page. There are 4 other pages like this in your report, one for each of the other 4 practices that have their 6 behavioral statements and all the raw data from all of your observers. There's a lot to take in here. My suggestion is you read through your report and just circle things that seem significant. Bring some questions to our coaching call if you have them about how you might interpret some of this and what you might do with it. And then let's see. Oh yeah, there's one more page I wanted to bring up here. Yes, this is page 5 of the report. As we said, there are 6 behaviors for each practice. That's 30 altogether. Here they are. Here are the 30 behaviors of the LPI. And every report in this group has all 30 items, but they're in a different order because these are rank ordered on your report based on the average score. That's the center column of numbers. So the average of all your observers from highest to lowest. So the things at the top of the chart above the first black line, the top 10, these are the things people see you doing most frequently. Yay, here's where your strengths are. Let's look at those. We will look at those first to see where people identify you as being most active in these leadership dimensions and how that compares to your self-score. You'll also see that in those top 10, which practice comes out as strongest because you can see each item is identified with its practice. So for this person, Challenge the Process has 4 of its 6 behaviors in the top 10. So clearly this is a strength area for you. And Enable Others to Act has 3. So there you go. Now, I will ask you to look at the bottom of the chart as well, because since this is a rank ordering, something has to fall to the bottom based on that average of all your observer scores. And you can see here that for this person, 5 of the 6 lowest scoring items are in the practice Encourage the Heart. If this were you, I would ask you some provocative questions about how you see the need to provide people with recognition and create a sense of community at work, because our research shows this is equally important. Not to say that you don't do it, but how could you do it more? And I'll say right now, well, I said this before, that Inspire or Shared Vision tends to be the lowest scoring practice on many people's reports. For this person, they have 3 of the 6 behaviors and the lowest 10. So a lot of questions oftentimes for leaders, well, how do we help people have a sense of the future? How do we help people look ahead? It's a big question. So as we go through the report in our coaching session, of course, I'll answer any questions you have about how things are structured or how you might understand more about the individual behaviors. Since we haven't done the workshop, we haven't had as much time together as we often do, but we can still make that very valuable for you. Now, this is all data. This is all numbers-based assessment. As you know, if you've completed the LPI for others, and then of course you've read your own report, that there are narrative questions. There are 5 of them at the back of the report, wherein people could just make whatever comments they wanted to these 5 questions. People just type answers into a text box. They show up on your report verbatim. We mix up the order of the responses between the questions so you can't see a pattern of who said what, because that's not really the point. This is just about taking in feedback, not thinking about who said it. Oftentimes people read their narrative first, and many of us are more literary minded than numerically minded, like this kind of feedback better, but you see we have both. You have both here. Okay, so let's talk now about where we go from here, because I'm very excited to spend time with each of you in the coming weeks to talk about what you see on your LPI and how you can make the most sense of it. And the first thing I'll say is, remember, this is just feedback. This is just information. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. It's how we get good at anything, is by allowing ourselves, by seeking people's perspective on our behavior, on our performance. It's a good practice, even though sometimes feedback doesn't feel real comfortable. It's almost always good for us, especially if it's delivered well. Okay, so when you're reading your own report, I know you already have, but before we get together on the phone, just think about, well, if you were to extract from your feedback, well, what messages are people providing you? You know, what are the bullet points here? What's most important in the feedback to you? What are you pulling out? That's what I'd like you to concentrate on. And then to think about, well, what's the significance of those messages? Because some may be more important than others. What do you want to take action on? Because that, of course, is the point, is what can we learn from your feedback? You know, when we talk about the 5 practices, 30 behaviors, we understand that these behaviors, many of them are almost second nature, but none of them are intrinsic. They're all learned. So we can not only measure leadership, we can teach leadership. Many of us have learned it, you know, throughout our career, of course, but if we make it sharpen up the focus of what this means, we can learn it better. And that's good for you. It's obviously good for the people around you too, because they want you to be more effective leading them, I'm sure. True for all of us. And I'd also like to focus in our coaching call on how you put your insights into practice. You know, what are you going to do? It's not just, you know, well, I got some interesting feedback and then you put it on the shelf. People want to see you take action. They want to see you try some things, even if they are going to be a stretch. It's all about how we learn and put it to work, right? Okay. So now about coaching. I have 2 coaching certifications, and I'm also Master Certified in Leadership Challenge. I have probably coached 500 people on the LPI. That might be an underestimate. I don't even know. But I've done a lot of this, and it's one of the most joyful things I do, because I so much like to meet people and get their perspective on things. So we have the opportunity to do these one-on-one sessions. They're confidential. It'll just be you and me. Nothing's recorded. I don't report on what you said or anything like that. I just will take note of how many sessions we've done. That's it. And it's a safe space. You can consider it that. I'm a really good listener. You'll be doing most of the talking. I'll be asking some questions and clarifying some things when they come up, of course, because my job here, my ability to be curious is to help understand what's on your mind and what's on your plate. How can you be just a little bit more leaderly, if you will? Now, the word leaderly I made up, but it is about how to put these things in action for people, for yourself. It's all about growth, right? Nobody's born a leader. We develop leaders. And the focus is on what comes next. We don't use the LPI as a performance management tool. We use it as a developmental tool. So we can say, I'm going to pick on somebody else here. For Hugo, for you, Hugo, we can say, well, what do you get out of all of this that can help you be more successful for yourself, for your team, for Watkins, for your family, for your community? There's no end to this. There's no end to the need for more effective leadership in our world. At least that's my philosophy. And especially now, with how volatile the world is and how much uncertainty, we need people to step up and say, be strong, basically, be visible, be present. And this will help you do that in a way that is, as I said, it's all evidence-based. We didn't just make it up. Okay, so you already received from Mr. Brett Cooper this morning an email linking you to my coaching calendar. And since he sent that out, I had 3 people sign up before this call. So thanks for that. It's a really simple system. You click on the Meet Me link and it'll go to my calendar, and you click through a couple of pages and you can pick a time and just fill out the form and send it in. It'll take you about 3 minutes to match your calendar to mine. And then I will be in touch with you to confirm the day before, and also probably give you a few thoughtful questions to guide the discussion. And when we get online together or get on the phone together, we have an opportunity to just dig into your report, what it's looking like for you, and what you're curious about, where you'd like to take it. I'm sure it'll be a stimulating discussion. It's the favorite thing I get to do. All right. So with that, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say today. But of course, if anyone has questions now, we have a couple minutes left. And I'd love to hear your questions. See, Brett, did anything come up in chat?
No chat questions.
Okay. Well, if you have a question, you may unmute. Or not.
I did send a chat to you directly, Dan. The part about not applicable, being applicable in this in this study, it just seems to me that there are lots of relationships where certain traits aren't going to be noticed just because of the nature of the relationship.
Yeah.
I'm working with my boss, I'm going to probably see all of these. But if I'm working with a peer, one while, but they've asked me to evaluate them, I may never have seen them inspired. I may never have seen them do certain things. So to me, it's perfectly valid in those situations, not applicable. Now, I can see where the tendency to use not applicable might be overused, but I don't know. It seems to me like there's got to be a space for it.
Thanks, Brick. I really appreciate your perspective. And as Brett would probably echo, this is the most common question we get. And what I can say is it wasn't me who designed the system. It's just not a way of copying out. I actually agree with Barry Posner about this. Barry's the brains behind the LPI. He's really an amazing guy. But their perspective is we lead every day, all of us. Doesn't matter what your job title is. Doesn't matter if you're a solo operator, independent, self-employed person, whatever, you still have the opportunity to lead in these 30 ways every day. In fact, the truth of the matter is you do, whether you're aware of it or not. It just may be low frequency based on context, which is, I think, what you're saying, Brick. And yeah, I understand that. But still, that's how we look at this. And I'm not sure what the final best answer to this is. I mean, I go with the authors on this. Is like, well, okay, all these things are important, and if people don't see them, doesn't mean it's not important. It means they don't see you doing it. is a different message, then it's not relevant to our working relationship.
So perhaps really if we're aware of 30 traits, whether we're naming them as we go about our daily routines and interactions, we are doing them, or we're not doing them as it may be, but we should be aware that they are an influence on people. And so the inspiration, for instance, might be just apparent based on how we do things as opposed to talking about it. Something like that.
Something like that. I think you're onto it, Brick. It's subtle. And a lot of our effect on other people is very subtle. It's what we do. It's not always, formal meetings and grand pronouncements and things. It's just the way we are every day has an effect on people, which is why we say leadership is the realm of influence, not control. It's the opportunities you have every day, once you become more aware of these behaviors, to choose to use them, even in a casual water cooler conversation, to talk a little bit more about the future of the company, for instance, when you have that moment with someone. That can become very powerful, because when these behaviors become habitual, when they become internalized, to become part of the way we are, we become more effective. That's exactly what the research tells us. It's powerful stuff. And one other thing, Brett, just on language, is we don't call these traits, because when we think of trait, we think of something innate. That's what you were born with, like your IQ or your personal style or personality. We are careful to identify these as behaviors, as behavioral tendencies rather than traits, because everyone has the ability to do these behaviors. There's just no question about that. Anybody can study this stuff and pick things they want to do more of and do that. It is about what we do, which is why we consider this a learning process. In fact, Brett and I, Integris, our goal is to get this kind of education to people earlier and earlier in their career, so they learn these things before they get to those higher positions. You don't wait till you're in a leadership position to study leadership. That's silly. You want to help people starting to learn this at about age 10, because that's the age when kids wake up to themselves and can do things. And Brett and I have had a great time with his now 17-year-old daughter, helping her learn these things as she went through high school. Brett could tell all kinds of stories about Sophie's ability to go, oh yeah, I just modeled the way. How about that? Because we're setting a foundation for people's long-term professional success, not just in the workplace, but in life. This is really, there isn't any boundary between work and life when it comes to leading. That's what makes this stuff so interesting to me. Anyway, Brick, I hope I slaughtered your question. Thanks for bringing it up. We're just about out of time. So if anyone else has a question, please speak up. I also will say that you have my email. So if you have a question, no problem. Just email me. Let me know. I'm here for you. Brett and I are both here for you. Of course, this is what we do. And then in terms of the coaching schedule, you'll notice that I have a couple of appointments this week, but nothing next week. And unfortunately, I'm fully booked next week. I won't be able to take any calls, but I put 30 sessions on the calendar in August. So there should be something there that works for you. And if there isn't, just email me and let me know. We'll get on the phone. We'll work something out. But I found that this calendaring program makes things much simpler for everybody. That's why I use it. So with that, Brett, I think I'll turn it back to you and see if you have any final comments for us.
Yeah, no, I would say that, again, this is, what we're doing right now with getting you into your LPI is getting you familiar with the behaviors, getting you some background, and most importantly, giving you the feedback that others have given you, the gift that others have given you, as timely fashion as possible. And I know for myself, the first time that I took the LPI, looking at those numbers, it was a little bit like, okay, so what am I supposed to do with this? So I think the next step of digging in and having Dan be able to guide you a little bit is just going to be really valuable for you. So Dan offered himself as, if you have any questions, of course, go to him. You also have my email, and I'm here to help. I'll, of course, be working with Kim and the team to get everything set up for the fall timeframe. But we're now at the top of the hour, so I think we've gone through what we needed to go through today. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and rest of your week. And just really appreciate the time and look forward to working with you throughout the course of the year.